Why was she the only one awake in the barracks? The lights were dim, humming faintly overhead, a sterile glow that painted every steel bunk in shades of gray. Outside, the night wasn't silent. It carried the low rumble of trucks, distant voices, the restless shifting of men and women preparing for something they couldn't yet name. But inside, it was her breathing that felt the loudest. Calm, almost steady, but carrying the weight of a question she couldn't shake. Her rifle leaned against the wall, stripped down and reassembled hours ago, a ritual she clung to. Every piece cleaned, oiled, touched like a prayer. One bullet remained separate, just one. She had stared at it longer than she cared to admit. A single brass casing, a single promise, or a single doubt. That was the difference. That was the danger. She rubbed the bullet between her fingers, feeling the cool metal warm against her skin. The others thought she was precise, calculated, unshakable. A sniper who could hold her breath until the world stilled, squeeze the trigger and never flinch. They didn't know what burned behind her calm eyes. They didn't know what memory lived there, crouched in silence, waiting to be called back. Because when the shot broke, it wasn't only a target that fell. She closed her hand, hiding the bullet like a secret. Tomorrow she would step into the field. Tomorrow they would expect her to be perfect. And tomorrow she would either carry this mission, or it would carry her into something she wasn't sure she could return from. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The door creaked. Sergeant Ruiz, his face lined by years of smoke and desert suns, leaned inside. His voice was rough but quiet, as though speaking louder might break her apart. "You're up early." She slid the bullet into her pocket, forced her expression still. Couldn't sleep. He studied her longer than she liked. Men like Ruiz saw through walls. None of us really do, not before a day like this. He nodded toward the rifle. "You'll need her. Make sure she's ready." "I always do." But when he left, her hand drifted back to her pocket, fingers brushing that one bullet as if to remind herself it was still there, still waiting. The briefing came before dawn. A cramped room, stale coffee, maps spread across tables that smelled of dust and ink. Voices overlapping, radio chatter, boots scuffing concrete, a cough, the shifting weight of soldiers pretending not to be nervous. She stood at the edge, listening more than speaking. They were going into the valley, an old village torn apart by too many years of promises and betrayals. Intelligence said a high-value figure was there tonight, someone they'd been hunting for months, someone who cost lives, too many. Her job was simple: cover the approach, eyes on rooftops, windows, shadows. No one got in or out without her seeing it. Simple, that was the word they used. She traced the routes with her eyes, memorizing every contour of the terrain. The mountains pressed in tight, a throat of stone and dust. She knew how sound traveled there, how echoes betrayed positions, how one rifle crack could ricochet forever. And she knew the weight of being the only line of silence between her team and whatever waited in that valley. But as the commander's voice droned on, her focus slipped. Not to the maps, not to the mission, but to a memory. A rooftop. A child's face. The recoil of her rifle, her heartbeat hammering against ribs that felt too small to contain it. She blinked hard, forced herself back. No one saw it. No one ever did. That was her armor, but the memory never really left. It never forgave. When the meeting ended, the others filed out, trading half-jokes, thin laughs that couldn't hide the fear. She stayed behind, staring at the map until it blurred. Her hand clenched into a fist, nails biting her palm. Why now? Why tonight of all nights was the memory stronger? "Hey," a voice pulled her back. Corporal Ellis, barely 20, freckles, eyes too young for this war. He carried his helmet tucked under his arm. "You okay?" She straightened, her mask sliding back in place. "Fine." He hesitated, shifting his weight. "Just, you don't talk much. Makes the rest of us wonder what's in your head." She almost smiled, but it was bitter. "Trust me, you don't want to know." He didn't push, just nodded as though he had his own ghosts, then walked out. The convoy rolled at sunrise. Engines rumbling, dust clouds rising behind them like ghosts that couldn't keep up. She sat in the back, rifle across her knees, helmet shadowing her eyes. The others around her fidgeted with gear. Some closed their eyes, some prayed. The rhythm of tires against broken roads filled the silence between them. She looked at their faces, faces she might have to save, faces she might not be able to. Ruiz with his jaw set like stone. Ellis chewing his lip, staring out the window. Two others whispering about what they'd do when they got home, if home still meant the same thing after this. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe she could protect them all, but she knew better. A single mistake was enough. A single doubt was enough, and she carried both. Hours later, the valley swallowed them. Narrow roads, cliffs rising sharp, the sun burning white overhead. Her team moved into position, boots crunching gravel, radios clicking softly, the silence between words heavier than anything said. She climbed higher, each step measured, each breath drawn against the thin air. When she reached her perch, she set the rifle down, aligned her scope, and let the world shrink into circles of glass and crosshairs. From here she could see everything, the skeletal frames of buildings, shadows slipping through alleyways, a rooftop where a figure paused just long enough to make her pulse quicken. She adjusted, steadying her hand, her breath. But she didn't fire, not yet. Her earpiece crackled, eyes on rooftops, Ruiz's voice clipped. Clear so far, she lied. Because what she saw wasn't clear at all. The figure had ducked away, too fast, too deliberate. She felt it in her gut, this was no civilian. But why hadn't she taken the shot? Her finger had hesitated, just long enough to let the doubt sink deeper. Minutes stretched, heat shimmered off stone. Her rifle felt heavier with every breath. The team advanced below, weaving through ruins, scanning corners, and she kept watching, kept waiting, kept questioning herself. Then movement, a glint of metal in a window, a muzzle rising, time slowed. She shifted, aimed, breath locked in her chest. But in that second, she wasn't in the valley anymore. She was back on that rooftop. That child's face staring at her, wide-eyed, caught in the scope. Her finger trembled, her chest constricted. Take it, Ruiz's voice barked in her ear. Her finger froze. The shot never came. A crack split the air, but it wasn't hers. Below, one of her men dropped, clutching his side, the radio exploding with chaos. She gasped, too late, too slow. Her bullet was still in the chamber, her doubt still in her mind. And now the mission had changed. What did hesitation sound like? To her, it was the sharp crack of a rifle she hadn't fired, the echo of stone dust showering down from broken walls, and the choked gasp of Corporal Ellis, his young voice cut short as he staggered into the dirt. She pressed harder into the ground, scope locking onto the window where the glint had come from. A shadow moved, fast, disciplined, not reckless. The enemy knew they'd landed a blow, and they knew she'd hesitated. Her finger curled around the trigger now, but it was too late. The window was empty. Silence filled the valley again, the kind of silence that screams louder than noise. Man down, Ellis is hit. The radio burst alive, voices colliding, boots scraping as her team scrambled to pull him to cover. Her chest tightened, she had seen it, she had been ready, and still nothing. She blinked hard, pulling her focus back to the present. Down below, Ruiz pressed Ellis against a wall, applying pressure, yelling for the medic. Ellis's face was pale, his freckles blurred by blood soaking through his vest. His lips moved, broken whispers carried by the wind, words she couldn't hear but imagined too easily. Her earpiece crackled again. Ruiz's voice wasn't sharp this time. It was ragged. "Sniper, where the hell were you?" She had no answer, none that could be spoken. Her breath shuddered. She tracked her scope back across the rooftops, the alleys, the shadows. Every window became an accusation, every door a reminder. She wanted to tell herself she'd be faster next time, but the memory of the last hesitation burned too deep. It wasn't the first time, that was the truth. The rooftops blurred and she blinked the sting from her eyes. Focus. She had to focus. Ellis was still alive, he could still make it. But if she faltered again, if doubt sat heavier than steel, none of them would. She whispered to herself the words only she could hear. Don't freeze, not again. The team pushed deeper into the ruins, carrying Ellis with them. Their movements tighter now, sharper, each step shadowed by the fear of another shot. She adjusted, tracking every angle, every possible vantage point. But her chest stayed tight, like a fist was pressing against her ribs. Because she knew what came next. The enemy wouldn't stop at one. Minutes stretched like hours. Dust swirled in the valley wind, clinging to sweat, stinging her eyes. The sun had climbed higher, burning white against stone. And still no more shots, just the waiting. The cruel kind of waiting that let fear ferment. Her earpiece cracked again, softer this time, Ruiz. He's stable for now, we're moving. You see anything, you don't hesitate. His tone wasn't anger anymore. It was trust stretched thin, about to break. She whispered back low, steady, copy. But inside her heart answered differently, can I? They reached the center of the valley. An old courtyard, walls broken, weeds sprouting between fractured tiles. It had once been a school, chalkboards still hung crooked, paint peeling, children's drawings faint on crumbling walls. She could almost hear their voices echoing across time. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Why did places like this always feel haunted? Not by ghosts, but by memories of lives that never got the chance to finish. Her scope traced the edges of the courtyard, then caught something, a reflection subtle, wrong, a shard of glass on the ground. No, not glass, a lens. Her pulse surged. 2 o'clock, second floor, left window. Her voice was calm, too calm, though inside she was fire. Ruiz answered without hesitation, take it. She exhaled, steady. The figure shifted behind the window, rifle lifting. Her finger squeezed and the world cracked open. This time she didn't freeze. The figure dropped, a rifle clattering against stone. Silence followed, heavy, then broken by Ruiz's voice. Confirmed. But there was no relief. The shot had landed. The kill was clean. And yet the aftertaste of her hesitation lingered, bitter, clinging to her like smoke. Because Ellis still lay bleeding because of her silence. She swallowed the knot in her throat, scanning again, refusing to let her chest soften. Not now, not when the valley still watched. They moved again, searching building by building. Her crosshairs swept rooftops, doorways, cracks in the walls. Each moment stretched, each shadow threatening to breathe. Then she saw it. Not a weapon, not a fighter, a child. Barefoot, darting through an alley, clutching something against their chest. Not older than 10. Her breath hitched, her chest freezing as the crosshairs hovered. A flash of memory ripped through her. Another child, another rooftop. The shot she'd taken years ago that had burned into her bones ever since. It hadn't been clean. It hadn't been supposed to happen. Her finger trembled now, the line between target and innocent blurring in her mind. Report, Ruiz's voice snapped in her ear. She couldn't answer, not yet. Her eyes stayed on the child as they vanished behind a crumbled wall. She exhaled slowly, lowering her scope. Nothing, her voice was steady, but it was a lie, another one. The weight in her chest deepened. How many lies could she carry before they crushed her? By the time the sun dipped, painting the valley in long shadows, her team had cleared 3 blocks. Resistance had flared, sporadic gunfire, a grenade that shook the ground, but they pressed forward. Each clash ended with more silence. Too much silence. Her scope found bodies cooling in the dirt. Some armed, some not. The line blurred so often out here it felt like a game no one ever won. As night crawled in, the radio crackled again. We found something, you'll want to see this. Minutes later she descended from her perch, boots crunching against stone as she joined them in a dim basement lit by a single lantern. The air was thick, heavy with damp and rust. Against one wall, crates lined in rows, weapons, ammunition, but it wasn't the crates that stopped her cold. It was the photographs pinned to the wall. Dozens of them, faces of soldiers, her unit, her friends. Their movements tracked, their patrols marked, their lives reduced to pieces of paper in an enemy's hands. And near the center, her own face. She stared at it, pulse hammering, a grainy image through someone else's scope, proof she'd been in their sights long before she knew it. Ruiz's voice broke the silence. They've been watching us, waiting. Her stomach twisted. The doubt inside her wasn't just her own anymore. It had been fed, planted, nurtured by eyes that studied her, waited for her to falter. She touched the photograph, fingers brushing the edges. The face staring back at her looked younger, calmer, like a version of herself that didn't carry this weight. But that woman was gone. She clenched her jaw, tearing her gaze away. We finished this. The others nodded, though unease flickered in their eyes. They had all seen their faces on the wall, all felt what it meant. When they climbed back into the night, the valley was darker, the silence thicker. Somewhere out there, eyes were still watching. And she knew what it meant now. This wasn't just a mission. It was a game she was already a piece in. And the next move would demand more than a bullet. It would demand something from inside her she wasn't sure she still had. When did night become heavier than day? Not just darker, heavier. Like the air itself pressed down, thick with weight no one could shake off. The valley lay in silence, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that hides teeth. She crouched on a rooftop again, her rifle steady, her scope sweeping through black windows and shattered doorways. Below, her team moved in tight formation, shadows against shadows, their radios whispering. But her mind wasn't quiet. It kept replaying the basement wall, the photographs, her own face circled like a prize. The truth was simple. She wasn't hunting them. They'd been hunting her. Her throat was dry. She shifted slightly, the stone beneath her cold even through her gloves. One bullet in her chamber, a dozen more in her pack, but only one question mattered. What if she froze again? A flicker of movement pulled her eye. Second-story window, curtains fluttering, nothing more, but her chest clenched anyway. She forced herself to breathe slow, steady, pressing the doubt back. Don't freeze, don't freeze. The radio crackled. Ruiz's voice was low. Checkpoint ahead. We push through fast, quiet, cover us. Copy, she whispered. Her scope traced the path they'd take. Narrow alley, walls close, only one exit. A kill box. She hated it. Her finger rested against the trigger anyway, waiting. The team slipped forward, boots against dust. A hand signal, silence. Then a flare burst overhead, bathing the valley in brutal white light. Shadows exploded into shape. Figures rising from doorways, rooftops, corners. Gunfire tore the silence apart. Her scope locked on the first muzzle flash. She fired. A man dropped, shifted, fired again. Another fell. But they kept coming. Her earpiece erupted with chaos, shouts, curses, the scream of rounds hitting stone inches from flesh. She fired again and again, but the tide didn't break. Below, Ruiz dragged Ellis deeper into cover, blood trailing dark against stone. The medic knelt beside him, hands frantic. Another soldier went down, clutching his leg, his scream sharp, desperate. Her chest burned. She fired, breath locked, eyes stinging. Each shot was precise, each one clean, but there were too many. And then she saw it. A figure on the far rooftop, taller, steadier, rifle poised, their movements too calm, too measured, her heart stuttered. Another sniper. Her scope slid over, crosshairs aligning, but this one was fast, as if they already knew she was there. Their rifle turned, barrel glinting in the flare's dying light. Time slowed, her breath caught. Two snipers, staring at each other through circles of glass. Her chest froze. She could feel the tremor in her finger. One of them would fire first. One of them wouldn't walk away. The memory of the rooftop, the child, the mistake, everything roared back, louder than the gunfire. She blinked, trying to force it away. But the image overlapped with the present. The scope blurred. "Take the shot," Ruiz's voice thundered in her ear. She clenched her teeth, her finger tightened. But the other sniper moved first. The crack split the night, her shoulder jerking back as the round struck stone inches from her head. Dust showered her face, stinging her eyes. She rolled hard, pulling away just as a second round bit into the rooftop where she'd been. Her breath ripped out ragged. She crawled back, adjusting her scope, searching. The rooftop was empty now. The other sniper had vanished. She whispered into her radio, voice low, shaking. "Counter sniper, they're here." Silence on the line, then Ruiz steady despite the chaos. "Find them." She swallowed hard. Her hand steadied against the rifle, but inside everything quaked. Whoever that was, they weren't just another fighter. They had her measured. They had her fear. She scanned again, but the rooftops were only shadows. The sniper was gone, but not gone. Watching, waiting. Her chest ached. She could almost feel crosshairs pressing against her back. The fight below slowed, bodies sprawled in dust, the air thick with smoke and the bitter tang of gunpowder. The team regrouped, battered, silent. Another man down, Ellis unconscious, breath shallow. Her eyes closed briefly. This valley was swallowing them alive. And it was her fault. If she'd been faster, sharper, less broken by ghosts, maybe Ellis wouldn't be bleeding out. Maybe Ruiz's men wouldn't be carrying more dead weight than they could bear. But guilt was useless here. Guilt didn't stop bullets. When they moved again, her body followed routine, automatic, but her mind drifted back to the first mission that scarred her. It was years ago. Another valley, another rooftop. She was new then, too eager to prove herself, too desperate to be perfect. Her orders were clear: eliminate the spotter. Simple, precise. She steadied her scope, breath even. But when the figure rose, it wasn't a fighter. It was a boy, barely 12. Wide eyes, too big helmet, a rifle clutched awkwardly in his small hands. Her finger had tightened anyway. The recoil still lived in her bones. The boy had fallen, the rifle clattered away, and the silence after was louder than the shot. She told herself it wasn't her fault, that he carried a weapon. That hesitation then would have meant lives lost. But deep down, she knew it wasn't the bullet that killed her that day. It was the doubt that grew afterward. And now in this valley, that same doubt had followed her. The night deepened. Her team found a building to hole up in, 2 stories, broken windows, a roof half collapsed. They set watches, patched wounds, whispered in tired voices. The air smelled of dust, sweat, iron. She stayed on the roof, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning darkness that never looked empty enough. Ruiz climbed up quietly, his boots soft against the stone. He sat beside her, not speaking at first, just breathing, slow, heavy. Finally he said, "You saw him, didn't you? The other sniper." She nodded. Words felt dangerous, too fragile to speak. "You hesitated." He didn't say it like an accusation, just a fact. Her jaw tightened. She wanted to defend herself, to explain, but nothing she could say would change it, so she said nothing. Ruiz looked at her, eyes tired but steady. "You carry too much weight, I can see it. We all can." Her throat burned. "I can handle it." He studied her longer, then shook his head. "Handling it isn't the same as carrying it alone." He stood, leaving her with the silence again. Her eyes drifted back to the valley, the rooftops, the shadows that hid an enemy sniper she couldn't forget. Somewhere out there, another set of eyes waited for her. Patient, calculated. She tightened her grip on the rifle, whispering again to no one but herself. One bullet, one chance. But in her pocket, that single bullet she'd carried from the barracks pressed against her leg like a weight. She hadn't loaded it yet. She hadn't decided what it meant. Fate or failure. And the night wasn't done testing her. What does it mean when the dark feels alive? Not just heavy, but watching, listening, breathing with you. She lay prone on the rooftop, cheek against cold stone, rifle steady but her pulse anything but. The night pressed in close, shadows too thick, silence too loud. Somewhere in that silence another rifle waited, another heartbeat answered hers. She had faced enemies before, chaotic, desperate, reckless, but this one wasn't reckless. The rival sniper was deliberate, patient, too much like her. Her finger brushed the trigger guard, a subtle motion, more comfort than readiness. She wanted to tell herself she wasn't afraid, but fear was there, sitting behind her ribs, quiet and sharp. Her earpiece cracked softly, Ruiz's voice low, "We move at dawn, rest while you can." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Rest. How do you close your eyes when you know someone out there is waiting for the moment you blink? Her hand drifted to her pocket, feeling the small weight of the single bullet she carried. Not loaded. Not yet. She turned it between her fingers, the metal warm from her touch. A charm, a curse, a reminder. One bullet could change everything, or nothing. Her eyes closed for just a moment, and memory slipped in like smoke. A girl sitting on a porch long before the uniform, her father's old hunting rifle resting across her knees. He taught her patience, breathing, the art of stillness. "You don't pull a trigger with anger," he'd said. "You pull it with clarity." She had believed him then, back when clarity meant a deer in the woods, not a boy on a rooftop. Her eyes opened again. The valley stretched below, broken buildings, shattered walls, the skeleton of lives left behind. Somewhere out there, another sniper remembered their own lessons too. The hours dragged, each second a coil of tension tightening around her chest. Her team slept in the building below, bodies curled against walls, exhaustion heavier than fear. Ellis lay pale, medic at his side, breath shallow. Every rise of his chest felt borrowed. She stayed awake, watching, listening, waiting. And then, a sound faint, too deliberate to be wind. Her scope slid, crosshairs tracing rooftops, windows, cracks between shadows. Then she saw it, a reflection. Not bright, not careless. Just enough to whisper, "I see you too." Her breath stilled. The scope circled the reflection. Her finger eased onto the trigger. But nothing moved. No body, no face, just the glint. A trap, she knew it. The other sniper was baiting her, waiting for her to fire, to reveal her own position. Her muscles locked, sweat traced down her spine. This was the duel she had feared, the moment where hesitation wasn't weakness, it was survival. Minutes stretched into hours, neither of them fired. By dawn, her eyes burned, her body stiff, but she was still alive. And so was the sniper. When the sun broke the horizon, painting the valley in cruel light, Ruiz gathered the team, faces drawn, voices low. They'd lost 2 men last night. Ellis still hung by a thread. Supplies were thinning, and yet the mission remained. "The target's still here," Ruiz said, his voice steel over gravel. "We finish what we came for, or none of this means a damn thing." She watched the men nod, tired but determined. She envied their resolve. Hers felt fractured. As they moved out, she lingered on the rooftop a second longer, staring at the place where the reflection had been. Empty now, but not gone, never gone. The march through the valley was brutal. Sun high, heat crushing, the air full of dust that scraped throats raw. They moved in silence, every alley a threat, every rooftop a stage for unseen eyes. She stayed elevated, covering them, her rifle sweeping the horizon. Each sound made her flinch inside, though her body stayed still. A door creaked, a bird scattered, a piece of tin rattled in the wind. Her finger twitched every time, aching to fire, aching not to. And then she saw them. A figure crouched on a distant rooftop, tall, steady, a rifle cradled with care. Through her scope she saw the precision in their movements, the same discipline she carried. They were her mirror, her shadow. Her heart hammered. The rival sniper's scope shifted, slow, deliberate, directly toward her. She inhaled, held. Time folded in, narrowing to 2 rifles, 2 breaths, 2 lives balanced on a trigger pull. Her finger pressed, slow, careful. And then, a child ran between the buildings, breaking her line of sight. Just a blur of movement, bare feet kicking dust, arms flailing with something clutched close. Her finger froze. The rival snipers didn't. The shot cracked, tearing through stone inches from where her head had been. She rolled hard, dust choking her lungs, chest burning. By the time she steadied her scope again, the rooftop was empty. Gone again. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her rifle. Her throat felt raw. She could still see the child's blur of motion burned against her vision. Always children. Always the ghosts she couldn't fire through. Her earpiece sparked with Ruiz's voice. Status. She swallowed hard. Sniper still out there. His silence stretched long before he answered. Then it's you or them. She wanted to say she knew, but the truth sat heavy in her chest. Did she really know anymore? By afternoon, the team holed up in another ruined building, walls cracked, ceiling half collapsed. They ate in silence, rations chewed without taste. The medic worked over Ellis, muttering prayers between bandages. Ruiz leaned against the wall, smoking in shadows, eyes sharp but tired. She sat alone, rifle across her lap, back against stone. The single bullet still pressed against her pocket, heavier than anything else she carried. Corporal Ellis stirred then, weak but awake. His eyes found hers, lips pale but moving. She leaned closer, hearing his voice like sand scraping glass. "You didn't shoot, did you?" Her chest tightened. "What?" He swallowed, breath shallow. "Back there before I was hit, you saw them, but you didn't fire." She froze. The words cut sharper than any bullet. He knew. He had felt it. The silence before the shot that never came. Her throat burned, but she said nothing. Couldn't. Ellis coughed weakly, a trace of blood at his lips. "Don't make that mistake again." Then his eyes closed, drifting back into fragile sleep. She sat motionless, guilt pressing so heavy she thought it might crush her. The boy on the rooftop, the child in the alley, Ellis bleeding because she froze, and now the other sniper, waiting, patient, ruthless. It was her war now, not just against the mission, not against the valley, but against herself. She pulled the bullet from her pocket, holding it up in the dim light. One bullet, one choice. Whispering to herself, she said the words that had haunted her since that first mistake. "You only get one chance to be certain." She slid the bullet into the chamber, the click louder than any confession. The next time her scope found the rival sniper, there would be no hesitation. At least, that's what she told herself. But night was coming again, and the valley wasn't done testing her resolve. The valley changed at night. By day it was broken stone and blistering heat, all scars and silence. By night it was alive. The dark moved in ways that made the skin crawl, shadows bending, whispers carried in winds that never seemed to settle. The city was dead, yet it breathed. And she breathed with it, slow, controlled, cheek pressed to her rifle, scope sweeping rooftops, alleys, shattered doorways. She had chambered the bullet before dusk, and its weight haunted her with every heartbeat. One bullet, one chance, one promise. The team slept below her in the ruined shell. Ruiz had taken the floor by the door, pistol cradled against his chest, eyes closed but never resting. The medic had slumped against Ellis's side, exhaustion dragging her under. Ellis barely clung to consciousness, his breath shallow and erratic. Each rise of his chest sounded like an argument against the universe. But she stayed awake, always awake. The rival sniper had to be out there, watching, waiting. She could feel it, the same way a wolf feels the rival pack's gaze in the dark forest, a pressure that never left. At first she thought she imagined the sounds, a scrape against metal, a shifting stone, a rhythm in the silence that was too even to be natural. But then the whisper came. It wasn't in her ear, it wasn't in the radio, it was in the air, drifting through the cracks of night like smoke. Faint, distorted, carried by something she couldn't place. "You're still alive." Her whole body stiffened. She pulled the scope tight against her eye, sweeping every rooftop, every shadow. Nothing. The whisper returned. "You froze, didn't you?" Her finger tightened on the trigger. The voice was male, calm, almost amused. "Children don't belong here," the voice continued. "But they always end up between us, don't they?" Her throat dried. She wanted to answer, to curse, to shout, but silence was survival. Silence was armor. Yet the voice didn't stop. It threaded through the ruins, patient and cruel. "You hesitate, that's why Ellis bleeds. That's why your men die. That's why you'll die too." She forced herself to steady her breathing, to focus on the discipline drilled into her bones. Do not break. Do not give them ground. Her mind clawed for logic. The rival sniper wasn't close enough for her to hear him. He must have found some way to project, an old radio, speakers hidden in the ruins, tricks, psychological warfare. She knew the methods. She had even used them before. But knowing the tactic didn't protect her from its teeth. "You carry a bullet," the voice murmured. "You turn it like a prayer bead. You tell yourself it means something, but it doesn't. Metal doesn't absolve you." Her hands trembled, just enough that she shifted her weight to stop it. "Say something," the voice pressed, "or will you let me talk for both of us?" She wanted to stay silent, but silence became suffocating, wrapping around her until the words slipped from her lips before she could stop them. "What do you want?" The whisper paused, then came a soft laugh, cold and knowing. "There you are." Her gut twisted. She, broken the first rule, she had answered. "I want to see which of us disappears first," the voice said. "You or me. We both know it ends that way. A sniper's duel doesn't leave survivors." Her scope froze on a window across the valley. For a moment, she thought she saw movement. A shift of shadow, the glint of glass. But when she blinked, it was gone. "You're good," the voice admitted. "Too good. You should have killed me already. But you hesitate. That's your flaw. That's my weapon." Her jaw clenched. "And yours." A pause, then, "I don't miss." The silence after was worse than the voice itself. She pulled away from the scope for the first time in hours, resting her forehead against the rifle stock. The words echoed inside her, pressing against old scars. "You hesitate." Her father's voice, "Patience is clarity." Ellis's voice, "Don't make that mistake again." Her own whisper, "You only get one chance." She wanted to believe her hesitation was still human. That sparing a child made her something more than a killer. But in the field, hesitation wasn't humanity. It was death. The night dragged on, every minute an argument in her mind. She scanned, she searched, she waited. Shadows shifted but never revealed. The rival sniper never spoke again. When dawn's first light crept over the valley, her body ached from stillness. Her eyes stung. Her throat felt raw. She hadn't fired, not once. And still she lived. But so did he. The team moved again with the sun. Ellis carried on a makeshift stretcher, his breaths rattling like loose shells. Ruiz led with the same steel resolve, barking orders sharp enough to slice the fatigue from their bones. They advanced deeper into the valley toward the target building, the final stronghold. Every rooftop, every broken wall, her eyes swept for the rival sniper. She saw nothing, felt everything. The silence was its own threat. By noon, they reached the outskirts of the compound, a fortress of broken concrete, windows like empty sockets staring down. Ruiz signaled the halt. They crouched in cover, dust sticking to sweat. "Two teams," he ordered. "We breach from both sides, no mistakes." His eyes cut to her. "Sniper cover, this is your moment." She nodded, throat tight. Her moment, her burden. She climbed to a vantage point overlooking the courtyard. The sun bore down, making every shadow sharp, every breath heavier. Her scope swept the compound. Then she saw it. A flicker of glass in a broken window. A silhouette just barely moving. The rival sniper. Her chest locked. This was it. No tricks, no whispers, no hesitation. Her fingers settled on the trigger, her breath stilled. One shot, one bullet, one chance. But then she saw his face. Not clearly, not sharp, just enough. Young, too young, barely older than Ellis. Eyes focused, calm, steady, but not cruel, not twisted, just human. Her mind fractured in that heartbeat. What if he was like her? A soldier born of orders, trapped in ruins, carrying ghosts he didn't ask for. What if his hesitation was only hidden better than hers? She could kill him now, end it, save her team. Or she could wait and risk all of them. Her breath burned in her chest, her finger tightened. Through the scope his rifle turned, his barrel found her. 2 breaths, 2 rifles, 2 choices. And then, now, Ruiz's voice thundered through the radio, the signal for the breach. Gunfire erupted below, explosions cracked, the courtyard filled with chaos. But she never moved, never fired. Her crosshairs locked on the rival sniper's eye, and his locked on hers. Neither pulled the trigger. The battle raged beneath them, but in that frozen moment, the war was only between 2 ghosts in the ruins. And for the second time, she chose not to kill. The breach was thunder. Walls shook, dust rained. The compound swallowed gunfire and spat screams. Her team poured inside, silhouettes vanishing into the jagged mouth of the stronghold. But she didn't move, couldn't. Her crosshairs stayed on him. The rival sniper's scope was a black eye staring back. For a moment that stretched far too long, neither of them breathed, neither of them blinked. Her finger twitched against the trigger. A half ounce of pressure would decide everything, end him, protect them, prove herself. But he didn't fire either. And that terrified her more than a bullet. Why is he waiting? Gunfire roared from inside the compound. Ruiz's voice barked through comms, sharp and commanding. Second floor cleared, move, move. Her heart screamed at her to act, but her chest locked. The rival sniper's rifle dipped just slightly. His eyes, so calm, so young, shifted, breaking the connection. He swung his barrel away from her and toward the chaos below. Her stomach turned to stone. No, she whispered, breath shattering. He wasn't here for her, he was here for them. She shifted her aim, tracking him through the scope as he lined up his shot. The courtyard below was a storm, Ruiz dragging Ellis across cover, the medics shielding them with bursts of fire, 2 more men pushing toward a staircase. The rival sniper steadied on Ruiz. Her pulse spiked. She couldn't let him, not Ruiz, not Ellis, not like this. Her finger pressed down. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, the crack split the air. Her bullet shattered the window frame just inches from his face. Missed. No. He ducked back, glass spraying. For a moment she thought it was done, that he would vanish into the dark and she'd never see him again. But then he returned, calm, composed, his rifle swung back toward the fight below. Her 1 bullet gone. The silence after the shot was worse than the miss itself. It was an emptiness that screamed, "You failed." Her rifle was useless now, nothing but dead weight in her hands. And the rival sniper knew it. Their eyes met through scopes again, though hers no longer held power. He saw it, saw her weapon fall silent, saw her shoulders slump just barely. And instead of firing at her, he hesitated. Why? She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. All she could do was watch as he turned back toward the courtyard again. Below, Ruiz dragged Ellis into the compound's shadow, shouting orders through gritted teeth. The medic threw herself into cover, blood smearing her sleeve. The others advanced through smoke, step by step. And still, the rival sniper hadn't fired. He had the shot, Ruiz was clear, Ellis was helpless, he could end them both. But he didn't. Her mind spun. Why isn't he pulling the trigger? A memory surged, the whispers in the night. Children don't belong here. You hesitate, that's your flaw. No. It wasn't a taunt, it was confession. He was like her. He carried the same weight, the same doubt. Her stomach dropped. And now, because both of them hesitated, the fight below was turning into a bloodbath. The team's push had stalled in the courtyard. Enemy fighters poured down stairwells, rifles blazing. Grenades bounced across cracked stone, detonations rattling the compound's bones. She had to move, rifle or not, bullet or not. She slung the empty weapon and scrambled down from her perch, boots skidding across loose rubble. She hit the ground hard, legs protesting after hours of stillness, lungs burning with dust. Her sidearm was in her grip before her feet even settled. And then she was moving, sprinting into the compound shadow. The first room was chaos. Ruiz barking, Ellis bleeding out on the floor, the medic pressing hands against wounds, men firing through shattered doorways. "Where the hell were you?" Ruiz roared when he saw her. She had no answer, just action. She slid beside a fallen fighter, kicked his weapon aside, and fired down the hall where shadows pressed closer. The building groaned with war. Every floor was a battlefield, every stairwell a trap. The rival sniper hadn't fired once, not at her, not at Ruiz, not at Ellis. But he was still there, watching, waiting. She could feel him above, like a storm on the roof. And for the first time she wondered, was he her enemy, or was he trapped in the same silence as her? The team pushed room by room, step by bloody step. Gunfire carved holes in walls, dust clung to sweat and skin. The medic screamed for bandages. Ellis gasped for breath that never seemed enough. And she moved through it like a ghost, every shot from her pistol precise, every step deliberate. But her mind was somewhere else. Above. She could almost hear him moving, boots on concrete, the faint scrape of a rifle against stone. The rival sniper, the shadow she had chased and feared. He hadn't left. He was waiting for something. Not them. Sorry. By the time they reached the top floor, the compound was half silent, half burning. Smoke poured through shattered ceilings. The sun split through holes in the walls, stripes of gold against gray. And there he was. Across the rooftop, kneeling behind a broken wall, rifle cradled, scope lowered. Not aimed, not at them. Just resting. Her pistol rose before she even thought. His eyes lifted, met hers calm. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Ruiz stormed through behind her, rifle raised. She stepped in front of him, blocking the shot. "What the hell are you doing?" Ruiz barked, voice breaking with fury. Her chest heaved, her pistol shook in her grip. The rival sniper didn't move, didn't raise his weapon. "He's not shooting," she said, voice raw thin. Ruiz snarled, "Doesn't matter, drop him now." The rooftop held its breath. Smoke curled like ghosts around them. Ellis's moans carried faintly from below. And she realized this was it, the moment her bullet had always been meant for. But she didn't have it anymore. Only the weight of a choice. Pull the trigger with her pistol, kill him, obey, survive. Or let him go, trust a stranger who had spared her twice. Her finger hovered, trembled. The rival sniper lowered his rifle completely, laid it on the stone beside him, his hands lifted, open. His eyes never left hers. And in them she saw it. The same doubt, the same exhaustion, the same quiet plea, enough. She swallowed hard, throat raw. And lowered her pistol. "Jesus Christ," Ruiz muttered behind her. But she didn't care. For the first time, she chose mercy not as hesitation, but as defiance. The rival sniper gave the smallest nod, not thanks, not relief, just recognition. Two ghosts acknowledging each other. Then he vanished into the smoke. And she let him. The smoke lingered long after the gunfire died. The compound, once full of echoes, now sat in uneasy silence. Rubble crackled under shifting boots. Spent casings glittered in shafts of light breaking through torn concrete. The air was thick with cordite, blood, and a silence that weighed heavier than noise. She sat against a wall, pistol loose in her hand, lungs burning from dust. Her ears still rang from the fight, but beneath it, she heard what mattered: Ellis's shallow breaths. He lay on the floor nearby, pale, eyes glassy. The medic knelt over him, hands red, voice steady in rhythm with her work. Ruiz paced like a caged wolf, every step an argument unsaid. No one looked at her, not yet. But she could feel it coming. Ruiz's fury was a storm pressing against his chest, waiting for the crack of thunder. His eyes were daggers every time they flicked her way. She had stood in front of his shot. She had let the enemy walk. She had betrayed everything he believed in. And Ellis was slipping further from the edge of life with every passing minute. She pressed her head back against the cold wall, eyes closing, and tried to breathe. But the question clawed at her, merciless. Did I save anyone? Or did I just trade one life for another? The rival sniper's face lingered in her vision, the calm in his eyes, the silence in his surrender. She had seen herself there. That was what she couldn't explain, not to Ruiz, not to anyone. Not yet. When Ruiz finally spoke, his voice was controlled, too controlled. What the hell was that? She opened her eyes. His shadow fell over her, sharp, cutting. You had him, Ruiz hissed. You had the bastard dead to rights, and you, his jaw clenched so hard she thought it might shatter, you let him go. Her mouth was dry, she forced words through it anyway. He wasn't fighting. Bullshit. Ruiz slammed his fist against the wall, dust falling. He's a sniper. His job is to kill us. He would have killed Ellis. He would have killed all of us. Her voice cracked, but she held it steady. But he didn't. That doesn't matter, Ruiz roared. It doesn't matter if he hesitated, or if he dropped his rifle, or if he smiled at you. You don't walk away from someone who can bury a bullet in your head tomorrow. The medic snapped. Enough. Ellis doesn't need your shouting rattling through his skull right now. But Ruiz wasn't listening. His anger wasn't for Ellis, it was for her. You think this is about mercy, he spat. About conscience. You're wrong, this is war. Every time you hesitate, you don't save lives, you gamble with ours. She clenched her fists. The words stung because they were true, because she had heard them before, in training, in missions, in the silence of her own doubts. But she had never been able to erase that hesitation. She met Ruiz's glare. Maybe I don't want to erase it. He froze, disbelief cutting through his fury. You'd rather let him live than guarantee your team survives. Her chest heaved. She thought of Ellis's blood, of the rival sniper's eyes, of the weight of the single bullet she had carried for so long. I'd rather not become him. The silence after was heavier than the gunfire had been. Ruiz stared at her as though she had just betrayed something sacred. And maybe she had. They carried Ellis out at dusk. The medic had done everything she could, but her voice held no certainty when she said, he might make it. Ellis's breaths were shallow, strained, each one costing more than the last. The world beyond the compound was quieter now, though not safe. The valley stretched with shadows, the wind carrying only distant echoes. They moved carefully, bodies aching, nerves raw. She walked at the rear, rifle slung empty, pistol in hand. Every step was haunted by what she hadn't done. But beneath it all, something shifted. The rival sniper's nod, just that smallest acknowledgement, stayed with her. It wasn't thanks, it wasn't relief, it was recognition. That was what Ruiz couldn't understand. Mercy wasn't weakness. Not always. Sometimes it was the only thing that separated one ghost from another. Still doubt gnawed. What if she was wrong? What if the sniper came back, stronger, sharper, without hesitation next time? What if her mercy today was her team's death tomorrow? The question was poison, threading through her veins with every step. But she carried it anyway. They stopped at the edge of the valley that night, sheltering in the ruins of a burned-out village. The stars burned too bright above, cruel in their beauty, watching like indifferent witnesses. The medic worked on Ellis under flickering light, hands steady even as her voice trembled. Ruiz kept watch, his back to her, his silence colder than any insult. And she sat apart, pistol resting on her thigh, staring at the night. The memories came uninvited. The little girl in the ruins corner, eyes wide, clutching a ragged doll. The way she had frozen then, finger on the trigger, unable to fire. The way Ellis had taken the bullet instead. She had told herself it was a mistake, that hesitation was failure, that the guilt belonged only to her. But the truth was heavier. She hadn't frozen because she was weak. She had frozen because she saw her brother's face in that little girl's eyes. The brother who had never come home. The one she had promised to protect, but hadn't. The one whose photograph she carried, worn edges tucked into her jacket pocket, pressing against her heart like a wound that never healed. That was her secret, that was her doubt. Every child in the crossfire was him. Every hesitation was his ghost dragging her back. And she couldn't tell Ruiz, couldn't tell Ellis, couldn't tell anyone. Because they wouldn't understand. They would see weakness, not truth. So she carried it alone. When Ruiz finally broke the silence, his voice was low, rough. "We all lose people." She didn't turn, didn't speak. Ruiz stepped closer, shadows carving harsh lines across his face. "But you don't get to lose us because of them." His words weren't cruel. They weren't a shout. They were worse. They were quiet, heavy, and true. She met his eyes then, her own raw, tired. "I'm not trying to." "Then prove it." She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But how could she prove something when every choice she made split her in two? The silence stretched until Ruiz turned away, shoulders stiff. She pulled the photograph from her pocket once he was gone. Her brother's face stared back, smiling, forever young. She traced the worn edges with a finger, breath shaking. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I swear I'm trying." But the night gave no answer. Only the sound of Ellis fighting for his next breath. Only the weight of a bullet already gone. Only the silence of mercy that still felt like betrayal. Morning came without warmth. The valley looked the same, broken stone, hollow buildings, wind carrying sand through cracked streets, but something inside her had shifted. The silence of night had been heavy with ghosts. The dawn carried something sharper, a choice she couldn't escape. Ellis didn't open his eyes. He hadn't since they left the compound. The medic whispered numbers she pretended meant hope, but even her hands trembled when she pressed against his chest to keep the blood inside. Every breath Ellis took was a battle. Every exhale sounded like surrender. She stayed near him, eyes on the horizon, pistol across her knees. But her gaze drifted often to the folds of her jacket pocket, to the photograph inside. Her brother's smile. The reason she hesitated. The reason she had spared lives when others demanded she end them. She wanted to believe mercy mattered. But with every faltering beat of Ellis's heart, she asked herself, did my mercy kill him? Ruiz avoided her. He moved like a machine, barking orders, scouting paths, scanning the horizon. He didn't look at her when he spoke, didn't trust his eyes not to betray what his words had already told her. He saw her as weakness, as betrayal. The team followed him because he was certainty, she was doubt. And still she kept walking. By midday, the horizon broke open. The extraction point. Ruins gave way to a scar of road where an armored vehicle waited, dust haloed around its wheels, engine rumbling like salvation. The flag on its side caught the sunlight, the only clean color in a world of ash. They were almost there. She and Ruiz carried Ellis between them, his weight limp, his breath shallow. The medic ran ahead, shouting to the crew in the vehicle. Soldiers spilled out, rushing forward, voices sharp with urgency. The moment Ellis was lifted from their arms, she felt the cold spread through her chest. Her hands lingered in the air, empty, useless, as if they still held him. She followed, numb, pistol still holstered, watching, waiting. The medics inside the vehicle worked fast, too fast. That kind of speed never meant certainty. She wanted to believe he'd make it, needed to, but she had seen too many bodies stop fighting with the same rhythm Ellis now held. When the doors slammed shut and the vehicle began to move, Ruiz's hand gripped her shoulder. Not gently, not cruelly, just firmly. "We're not done," he said. Her throat burned. "Ellis." "He'll live or he won't," Ruiz cut in. His voice cracked, but his stare didn't. "But we still have to finish this." She blinked at him. "Finish what?" He looked toward the valley, toward the ruins, toward the shadows. "You know." Her stomach clenched. The rival sniper. They stayed behind. The others left with Ellis, the vehicle carrying him toward safety or toward silence. The dust it left behind stung her eyes as it vanished. Only she, Ruiz, and the medic remained, crouched in the ruins, weapons ready. "We clear the valley," Ruiz said flatly. "No more ghosts." But she knew he didn't mean we, he meant her. This was the test, the reckoning. She sat in the shadow of a wall, pistol heavy in her grip, staring out at the broken windows and rooftops. The rival sniper was still here. She felt it in her chest like a second heartbeat. Every time the wind shifted, every time sunlight glanced off stone, every time silence stretched just a little too long. He was watching, waiting. And so was she. The medic dozed against a wall, exhaustion pulling her under despite herself. Ruiz stood watch, rifle across his chest, jaw tight. But she remained still, eyes on the valley, fingers brushing the photograph in her pocket. Her brother's face, Ellis's blood, the rival sniper's calm eyes. They blurred together until she couldn't separate them anymore. And she understood something Ruiz never would. This wasn't about killing or sparing, not anymore. This was about who she chose to be when both options cut her open. The shot came at dusk. Sharp, clean. It shattered the wall beside Ruiz's head, stone dust spraying. He dove to cover, cursing. The medic jerked awake, eyes wide. And she knew. The duel had returned. Her chest clenched as she raised her pistol, scanning rooftops. But the rival sniper wasn't rushing, wasn't careless. It was an invitation. The second shot hit near her feet, deliberate, not a miss. A call. She swallowed, heart pounding. This wasn't random fire, it was for her. Ruiz snapped, "Find him, take the bastard down." She didn't answer, couldn't. Because this was Ruiz's fight. It never had been. It was hers. She stood slowly, ignoring Ruiz's shout. Her boots carried her into the open, into the valley's hollow chest. Each step felt like betrayal, each breath like surrender. But she didn't raise her pistol. Instead, she lifted her hand, empty. The wind carried silence heavy enough to break her bones. Then movement. The rival sniper stepped from the shadow of a rooftop, rifle in hand. His silhouette was cut in amber light, calm, steady. He didn't aim. Neither did she. They stood across the valley, two ghosts in the ruins, staring. And in that stillness, she saw the truth. He was as tired as she was, as broken, as haunted. This was never about enemies. It was about survival, about choices that stole pieces of them until nothing human remained. She lowered her hand. And so did he. They stood like that until the sun sank, until the valley swallowed them in shadow. And then he turned, walked away. Not running, not hiding, just gone. She didn't follow. When she returned to Ruiz, his face was stone. "You let him go, again." Her chest ached, but her voice was steady. "Yes." His eyes burned. "You've lost it, you don't get it." "No," she cut in softly, "I do." The silence between them was jagged. Ruiz looked at her like she was already dead. But she was not yet. She carried the photograph in her pocket, Ellis's breath in her memory, the rival sniper's nod in her chest. And she knew what they meant. Sometimes survival wasn't about who you killed. It was about who you chose not to. When they finally left the valley, dawn broke over the horizon, painting the ruins gold. She walked ahead, pistol holstered, jacket tight against the wind. The medic trailed behind, quiet, weary. Ruiz followed, his silence louder than words. No one spoke of what had happened, but she carried it with her. The weight of a bullet fired, the silence of the one not taken, the face of a brother lost, the life of a comrade spared or condemned, and the eyes of a rival who had seen her not as enemy, not as prey, but as reflection. Later, when she sat alone, she unfolded the photograph one last time. The smile still held. The edges were more frayed. She pressed it against her chest, eyes closing. "I didn't break," she whispered. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The wind carried her silence across the valley, and the ruins at last were still.